Gut Instinct, the podcast where microbes meet meaning. I'm Sean, filmmaker, health explorer, and your guide on this journey. We explore the powerful intersection of science, spirit, and self, one gut feeling at a time. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is medical advice, and we're not diagnosing, treating, or curing anything. Always check with your healthcare provider before making health decisions. The views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the host or production team. This week's guest is Jason Demchok. Jason is a culinary alchemist and chef affectionately known as the Fiber King. He helps people reconnect with their bodies through food, flow, and a gut-centered approach to mindful living. His work blends blissology, energy insight, and fermented wisdom. Now let's dive beneath the surface and into the terrain within. Welcome to the show, to the podcast and a film, Gut Instinct. And if you can start off, Jason, introducing yourself and tell me, what inspired your journey.
Well, my name is Jason. Grew up in New York in the 80s. And, I grew up with a lot of food. One of my favorite memories is my father in the kitchen cooking. And I'm probably like 5 or 6 years old, climbing up on the counter and discovering like a whole spice rack with all these, rosemary, clove, thyme. And I just remember opening up every bottle and smelling them and getting this new experience and like trying to read the word. So cooking has always been part of my life. And also I had a lot of health issues and I always loved biology. So I was always drawn to medicine. And, went to university, got more into psychology, but I did minor in biology and wound up going to Japan, which is another part of my story because I learned cooking in Japan from the local grandmothers. But I also had really bad gut issues myself, like IBS, like incredibly painful. So I went on a journey to try to fix my health my whole life, and that's taken me many, many decades even. And when I found Ayurveda, what I loved about it, the traditional food systems, was that the spices, which I loved, actually have the most beneficial properties. And now we know actually it's the polyphenols that feed the microbiome. So everything just kept going back to the gut, And after a long journey, I did wind up discovering how important the direct connection between the diversity of fiber and the diversity of your microbiome. And you want a diverse community in your microbiome.
One of the things I thought was really interesting that I've heard you talk about is you compare the colon to an inner garden. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people might not be able to put together garden and colon. It's like kind of this dirty, dark place. Mm-hmm. And now you're looking at it as a garden. So how did that come about? And then tell me what that,
Yeah, like if you take 1 teaspoon of soil, of good soil, there are literally trillions of things living in that soil. And, good soil comes from, basically cow poop, or like horse poop, or just animal, and there's worms and there's all these things in there. And if you look inside your colon, you literally have the same thing. You have this soil and then you have different microbes, some candida even, so it's not about getting rid of all the yeasts and the bacteria and even the worms. Now we know even the worms have a place in keeping this perfect gut brain going. Everyone's playing a role. So it's like, you've heard this ancient axiom, as above, so below, mm-hmm. as within, so without. So we literally have like the capillary systems are like the rivers of the world, right? And the nervous system is like the winds of the world, they call it. So our colon is like the earth. It's like the soil of the earth.
Very cool. I love that. And so if the colon is the garden, then what are the potential weeds that might want to take over?
Good question. So there are bacteria that we call probiotics or good bacteria. And even this is not such a good term because even the good bacteria, if they're in the wrong place, they're not so good anymore. So if the ones that are supposed to be in the large intestine are in the small intestine, that's a problem. And even worse, if the good ones or bad ones get out of the gut, the whole gut pathway and into the bloodstream, called leaky gut, now we have another problem. So you want them in the right place. But having said that, there are certain bacteria that are harmful. They create something called TMA, which is harmful for heart disease and cancers and many other things. So there's bacteria that are, create all the beneficial things. They turn genes on and off, so they completely boost our immune system, and so many other things. I mean, we're just discovering every day how much the microbiome affects everything.
Very cool. And another thing I wanted to ask is, you've talked about your body giving you feedback as you've gone through your journey. And what does that look like in terms of your health journey? And is it actually, are you hearing voices, or is it a way you feel? Or can you describe what that means to be the feedback from your body?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing is pain, right? So like I said, I had the IBS, which felt like I'd be on the toilet, just to be a little graphic, and it would be like a burning, and sometimes gas, where like painful gas. And they say people with IBS, they don't necessarily have more gas, but they have more nerves around their colon. So when it expands, you're way more sensitive. I just remember being in excruciating pain. My parents didn't understand. So I went on this journey, and I would have good years, bad years, and I went on the Ayurveda diet, which did seem to help compared to the, typical American diet. And then I learned about the paleo diet. So it made sense. I'm reading the science. So I'm eating basically like meat, turkey, raw eggs, and like berries and like some green vegetables. So I was doing that. And when you switch diets, your gut feels a little bit better for a little while, and you get like this, excitement. Oh, maybe this is going to work. Oh, gluten. I did the gluten thing a long time ago. But sure enough, the gut pain would always creep back in until I discovered this high fiber, high polyphenol diet. And I did get bloated. Like as you're eating more fiber, you will get more bloated. However, the burning went away. So I'm like, okay, I got rid of the burning, but I'm bloated but I didn't care. I'm like, is the burning going away? Felt so good. So there is like a sense on a physical level when you're eating high fiber and your gut microbes are really happy and they're producing serotonin and other neurotransmitters. There is this because I used to have a burning, and now it became almost like a coolness. It felt good. But then there is, even on a, psychological level, you do feel when you're eating the right foods, you do feel, better positive mood. Like I said, from the serotonin and the butyrate, and there's something called the second meal effect when you eat a high fiber meal, and then after it passes through, your body gets it into its bloodstream, the glucose, the fiber goes into your colon, and the microbes digest it and produce another form of energy, like without eating any more calories, just from the fiber. And so 2 hours after you ate, it's like you just ate again. You just get a little boost of energy. So all these great benefits that I discovered.
I've never heard that second meal. Can you explain a little more? Just so people understand.
Sure, absolutely. So we just put food in our mouth and somehow it's broken down. It is such a complicated process. You have fats and proteins and carbs. They all break down completely different ways. But for the most part, it gets into the stomach acid, starts breaking things down, and then it gets into the small intestine, and that's where protein is completely broken down through all these enzymes. And it's broken down, and then it's absorbed out of the small intestine before it reaches the colon. Same thing with carbs and fats also, the small intestine, right? But the fiber is the only thing that doesn't get digested. That's what makes fiber fiber. They are carbohydrates, but they just don't get broken down. They go into this large intestine, and they are the preferred food of the microbes. That's why, just like going back to that garden metaphor, what do we put in our garden? Compost. What is compost? Fiber. So we're feeding the same garden in here as what we're doing there. So if you don't eat fiber, you're not going to be feeding them as robustly, and your gut brain is going to shrink. So fiber is what passes into the large intestine and becomes the food for them. So they're happy. So we're wired to be healthy. So when they're happy, they let us know, good job, because we're their host. They're like, good job, here's a reward. So you get this second meal effect. And you stay hungry, you get less hungry. That's the other aspect of the second meal effect. They did this study with beans and oatmeal. If you ate oatmeal for 2 days in a row, then the third day you're going to wind up eating less food.
And I've read that, in that process of the fiber being digested, there's all sorts of things, compounds that are created. It could be vitamins or other beneficial chemicals. I think butyrate is one of them. Can you talk about some of the things that are being made during that?
Right. Okay, so while these bacteria in the colon, when they eat the fiber, they produce something called short-chain fatty acids. So here's a interesting side note. People think you got to eat healthy fats. Well, there's people in Okinawa who have traditionally had a very low-fat diet. But when you're eating sweet potatoes all day long, right, and those bacteria are eating the fiber and actually creating fat, short-chain fatty acids. So it is kind of a fat. Your body can make its own fat, but what they create is what these fats are called, like butyrate, acetate, right? But the butyrate has been very widely studied. This is a fascinating, most anti-inflammatory substance our body makes. So that butyrate is what protects your colon. So why did my burning go away from the IBS? Because I created this butyrate lining in my colon. And we could talk all about that, but it goes even beyond that. Butyrate goes from your colon to your lungs. So when people go on the high fiber diet, fix their gut, their asthma, their allergies go away. But it's even more exciting, the new research is showing that it actually travels into the brain. So it prevents, more toxins from getting into the brain, possibly. That's being studied right now. So they did find that people who had a higher fiber diet had less harm from COVID, less harmful effects from COVID because of the butyrate in their lungs.
So it goes through the whole body.
Yeah, it travels. I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but I know that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Butyrate it's a signaling, like everything is the body is fascinating. Everything is multi-dimensional, multifunctional. So butyrate does a lot of things. It's really important. So again, if you don't eat any fiber, you will be able to make a little bit of butyrate, but it's way clear, much more if you eat fiber.
You can also buy butyrate in a bottle. Why not just skip the fiber and get butyrate?
Yeah, you can. I actually did that once, and it was, I don't know, my experience, it was burning. It felt like burning pain. I don't know what it was, but yeah, no, I would let your microbiome do the job.
It's interesting because I had my own digestive issues, and I tried the butyrate as well, and it caused massive heartburn.
Yeah, that's what I got. Exactly.
But now that my gut is healed, I still had it, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just try it again. And to be honest, I didn't really notice anything one way or the other. So it's kind of interesting that we both had that experience. When my gut wasn't healthy, it felt really bad.
Exactly. When I was taking it, I was on a low fiber diet. So I wonder what it would do now. But yeah, it was brutal.
When we were in the park, we were talking about this project, and you gave a really cool answer that used the word gut instinct, but I can't remember the question that I asked you. Do you remember what I asked you?
Yeah, this is like basically my big message. This is like my my whole like passion and purpose is, imagine a community of people, because this is how I see it on a macro level, right? On a societal level, a whole community of people living in eco-friendly homes, food growing everywhere, nature everywhere, people laughing, people enjoying themselves, playing sports, conversating, kids playing around the fire. And what's really special about this place is every being is recognized for having its own unique purpose. So everyone's like excited. Instead of trying to put people into a box, everybody is like encouraged to share something unique. And because of the interrelationship of all these unique creative ideas, the place thrives and gets better and better, right? So I like to say that in your gut, that metaphor, that community is actually happening. You have trillions of bacteria. Scientists have measured 32,000 different species. And each one of these species is like a bug or a bacteria, and it literally is eating something, a fiber, and then it's pushing something out, a metabolite. Something else is grabbing one of those metabolites, eating it, and pushing out something else. So imagine trillions of things doing this, like trillions of times per second. This is happening in your gut. And, again, going back to that community, the more diverse, the more each one's uniqueness is allowed to come out, the better it is for the whole. It's literally what's happening in your gut. So now, not only does it make you healthier if you have more diversity, there's a great book called Fiber Fuel, talks all about that. But going back to that gut instinct, that's your second brain. So they're all producing neurotransmitters. So my theory is that the more fiber you're eating, the more diverse and robust your microbiome is, the smarter, the sharper your gut instinct is going to be.
Perfect.
Thank you. That felt good.
And let's talk more about this gut instinct. How is that important, not just physically, but also from an emotional perspective, a spiritual perspective, in terms of guiding what we eat, even the ideas we consume? There's a lot of different components to our gut, aren't there? So
yeah, thank you so much for asking that, because that's really my deeper passion, is the unconscious mind. And you can say, like, your heart, your gut, these are they're states of consciousness. They're like focal points of states of consciousness. And before we evolved to have a big brain, we had the gut brain. And you could see, like, lizards and stuff. They're in this very in the present moment, aware of what's going on. We're just like daydreaming up here, and they're just always there. So you could think of it like everything you're experiencing, like that your conscious brain could only pay attention to a limited amount, but it's taking in some data, but then your gut is taking in way more data. So, and we see that, like, when we're in a really dangerous situation, like a car, we know when that takes over and we're just like in the flow state. We're not thinking. So you could say that it's great to have this creative mind, but we have lost touch with that gut instinct, and people would have respected it more, and just learning to hear it, listen to it, which requires slowing down. So that's why we don't listen to it. The more distracted you are, the more you're up in your head, the less you're going to listen to it. So yeah, having that. It's like we all know when you say gut instinct, everybody knows what that means, because we all know, like, we had a feeling, and yeah. So that's how I would say.
Well, I was going to ask. I feel like in theory, everyone knows. Mm-hmm. But do you think that we're getting a little bit out of touch with it? Like, for someone who's watching this and they're like, yeah, but I feel anxious when I wake up. Like, is that my gut instinct? Should I maybe just pull the covers over my head and not go to work? Or, is my gut instinct to have another cookie? Is that like, we have all these impulses all day. And how do you know when it's like what we're calling a gut instinct, which is something maybe something that's bringing you to, I don't even want to say positive or negative, but it's bringing you to a more healthful state.
Right.
How do you how would someone listening, how do they know if it's their gut instinct or a craving or a fear or maybe something really great? Like, how have you learned to separate that, and what advice can you give?
That's a great point, because I hear people all the time like, oh, I eat this, it just makes me feel good. Feeling good doesn't necessarily mean it's like your guardian angel giving you some advice, So a lot of times feelings can be very true, like you said, the gut instinct. Other times feelings can be coming from our ego that wants to perpetuate it. So yes, breath work, slowing down your breath is for some people, this is a great way. And literally taking 5 minutes a day to do nothing but just check in, and see where you're feeling things. The thing that really works, this is something I really love, is to have someone ask you questions about what you're feeling and just answer from your feelings. Because a lot of times, like, we're being driven by our unconscious and we don't realize it until someone asks us the question. Or you could ask yourself the question too. You could journal, but it's good to know like what's coming up, you know, and then you can see what's your thought. That's a way to be able to see what's a real thought and what you're feeling. But really, yeah, I guess that's a great point. Like, you gotta just learn to check in with your feelings, which is breath work and just quieting it and feeling what's going on in your body. I mean, I do a lot of yoga, you know, like, so yoga to me is designed to do just that. There's a concept called interoception. They call it the eighth sense. You know, Buddhism, they've been explaining this in ancient times, but we have a way of feeling all these sensations going on in our own body. So when you do yoga very slowly and deliberately, you bring about sensations. You're changing blood flow. You do a shoulder stand, like, you know. So paying attention in all those different situations causes you to be more aware, like dancing. Anything just can really help you get in touch with your body. So I guess that long-winded answer is learning, like, your gut is like the center of your body intelligence. So the more things you can do to get in touch with what's going on in your body, to feel it, you know, like slow down a little bit. Even, I love going for a walk, you know, but if you're going for a walk on the phone, you're not going to get the benefits. Just walking and feeling how your body feels at all times.
Yeah, I talked to you before about terrain medicine, and one of my interests in this project is to look at terrain theory versus germ theory. And for someone who isn't familiar, how familiar are you with that? And can you explain what the difference is and, you know, what the controversy is?
So I grew up with my grandfather, who was one of the original health nuts. So I've been hearing about terrain theory since like the 80s, basically. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in New York City. You get on a subway. I lived in Tokyo. Like, you get on a subway packed with people. So if it was just a germ, you know, I always thought, like, how does everybody on the train not catch this cold? There's one person got a cold. He's sneezing. He's putting his germs everywhere. Trillions and trillions of things just in the subway. If it was that contagious, we'd all be sick all the time. So I knew there was something else going on, you know? So, but I'm not going to go to such an extreme and say that there is no germ. However, I have noticed some very interesting things, like a family would get sick and like one person in the family didn't get sick and they're all around them, you know? So also, from my understanding of holistic health, a sickness is not the problem. The sickness is just a detox, you know? Like, what is a fever? A fever is your body raising its temperature. You know, it knows what, but we try to stop the fever. You know, that's the whole, you know, germ theory. Like, oh, the germ is causing the fever. No, the germ, or whatever, something's going on in the environment. It's probably a toxin. What I've seen is, yes, there are viruses, but like, we're literally swimming in toxins. The food is so toxic. You're building all of that up, taking, you know, prescription drugs every day. After a while, your body is like, we need to get this out, you know? Yeah, like, so there's that aspect of things, like embracing the sickness. Like, this is a chance to slow down and, yeah, facilitate the detox process through herbs and, you know, high polyphenol fruits and stuff. But yeah, I mean, my approach has always been holistic. Your body is a system, right? And so you could say, oh, I take this herb for my liver, I take this for my kidney. To me, I do a lot of things that people probably don't know about. Like, I do hydrogen water, and I have my diet, and I do a daily cellular detox, and I have this thing that activates stem cells. But I never think of like, this is gonna be good for this. To me, I look at the body like a system. And I want to increase the strength of the system with things that are based on very solid scientific proof. So you cannot avoid germs. You know, there's a Buddhist saying, you can cover, if you want to avoid rough terrain, you can cover the entire earth with leather, or you can just wear sandals, you know? So my thing is like, I can't stop the toxins and the germs and the viruses. So I'm going to do everything I can to focus on strengthening my thing. Now, if I know someone's sick, am I going to give them a hug? No, I'm going to like take a step back. But I've been around sick people, you know, and there's even an argument, speaking of terrain, getting this sickness, getting exposed to things actually makes you stronger. So I've for a long time, again, this is not medical advice, but I have for a long time not been so afraid of the germ and have just focused on strengthening the terrain.
That's great. I mean, I think you kind of fall where I mean, I know there's some people who feel that germs do not exist at all.
Exactly.
And I'm open to it.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know for
exosomes
sure,
and there's
yeah.
like this idea that. Well, I'll give you that side of the argument because I have that too. You know, I look at it, I notice that like when you're busy, the sickness will wait. And then when you finish the project or something, all of a sudden, boom, you get sick. And I've also noticed that families get sick together. People could be separated geographically, like families, close people. One person's in like a totally different country, different state, they get sick at the same time. So I think there's like something sympathetic in us that says, I know I got to detox soon. Hey, if like we get sick together, like, you know, father and daughter and one of the brothers, and then the mother doesn't get sick, she'll take care of us. It's like, so it's really like this collective healing process. And if you want me to go one step deeper, more spiritual even, is, you know, I noticed this during COVID too. It's like, if you think of us each as a cell in the body, right? Like when we get a virus in our body, like it's theoretically, germ theory, like spreading through our cells. So if we're a cell and then there's like these sicknesses passing through us, if enough of us get it and fight it and create the antibodies, now we are going to help others get it, because just like the virus is contagious, so is the antibody. So my thought on COVID was like, let the healthy young people get it, create the antibodies, and then they conquer. That used to be called herd immunity. But they stopped talking about that word strategically, like in the beginning of COVID. I was talking to doctors about herd immunity, like, oh, that's just a theory. And like, like everyone's known about this. You get people with the measles, you put them all together, and you know, the chicken pox and everything. You used to do that. It was like a chicken pox party. Now they give you a vaccine for chicken pox.
So do you think that mainstream medicine is moving away from the idea of terrain-based medicine, or moving toward, or where are we at now? I mean,
when you say mainstream, I think I know what you mean. And I would say it is moving away. Like the glyphosate thing is, according to some people who I really respect, the biggest health threat of it all is the fact that we're just, there's glyphosate in every water system, in the air, it's in Antarctica, it's in like newborn babies, and it's not even letting up. So sadly, my take is that the problems we have are on a big scale getting worse and worse. You know, like, so, but the good news is a lot of people who are in the medical industry, very respected doctors, are like, this isn't working. Like, what are you guys doing? So it's pushing, so like the alternative, I don't even like that word, you know, but like the holistic health community is growing and growing with more and more respectable people. But the people who just like, give me a symptom, I got a symptom, give me a drug to fix it, I don't want to change anything about me. And the people who profit off that, they're not going anywhere. So, yeah, so it's, I want to give you this like, this optimistic answer, like things are changing, but...
Well, tell me, since you brought up glyphosate, because I know that has a lot, you know, an impact on our microbiome, and it's out there a lot. So why does it, you know, what impact does it have on the microbiome, and, you know, what is it? Tell me.
I have my mentor, Dr. Shenhong Liu, can tell you everything, but I'll summarize it. It does a bunch of things. It's technically an antibiotic. So it's classified as an antibiotic. So it's killing your microbiome. It's also glyphosate. The gly is for glycine. So your gut is held together through glycine. So it interferes with the glycine. So it messes up your gut, you know. So it's pretty fundamentally bad. You know, it does a lot of bad things. So yeah. And you know, and they have these tests, like it's harmless. It's not like poisonous like mercury, but like if you're eating it every day, every time you eat like a cookie that's not organically grown wheat, 100% has glyphosate in it. Anything made with corn syrup, if it's not 100% organic, it has glyphosate in it. It's literally in everything, you know?
And I read that when they created it, they found that I think it was called the Schuckerman pathway. Mm-hmm. They found that it, you know, harmed plants and fungi and so forth because they had that pathway. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, well, humans don't have that pathway, right? But what else does?
But here's the thing.
our microbiome, our beneficial bacteria does have that pathway, right? So I mean, that's just something I'm not.
So stupid, yeah.
Can you walk me through that if it's something that you're familiar?
Well, the only thing I'll add to what you just said is that it actually doesn't. The plants don't have the Shikitai pathway. It's the bacteria in the roots of the plants. So everything comes down to bacteria. So it's actually killing the bacteria that cause that. And I forget exactly how it works because they make these plants that aren't affected by it somehow. So it must have to do, I don't know how exactly that works, but I'm almost positive that it's an antibiotic. It's not killing, it's not like just the plant Shikitai pathway, it's the bacteria Shikitai pathway. So yes, it's harmless to humans, but it's not harmless to our microbiome.
Do you think there's any particular type of fiber that has the most benefit of all fibers?
Great question. I mean, again, the key is diversity. So it's not about better or worse, but there's two bacteria that we know are absolutely important. And it's like AB, Akkermansia and Bifida, right? So we've heard about the Bifida, and what makes Bifida? Beans, right? So eating a lot of beans increases your Bifida. And what makes the Akkermansia? Apples, cranberries, pomegranates. So in the human breast milk, there are many things. There's fat, obviously. Humans have less fat than a cow. Like cow is like very fatty, right? Butter. Humans have very high carb milk, which is an argument for being plant-based because we need, you know, for eating more carb stuff. So there are sugars, there are fats, there are proteins for the growing baby, there are hormones, but there's also these things called oligosaccharides. So one of them is called HMO, human oligosaccharide, human milk oligosaccharide. So this is very high in breast milk. Why? Because that bacteria feeds the Akkermansia. And the Akkermansia is a keystone bacteria. You've heard of salmon as a keystone species, meaning the bears and all these other species need that salmon. It's like if the salmon disappears, all these species disappear. It's the keystone of like keeping the house together. So Akkermansia is the keystone bacteria, meaning that it creates the mucosal lining in the colon that all the other bacteria live inside of. So when the Akkermansia is not there, you have a lot of problems. So it's that important that the human breast milk has high amounts of this, right? So you could take it as a supplement now. So if you can't breastfeed, there's ways to get these HMOs. But we know that the apple skin, you know, this expression, eat an apple a day. Apple skins have been shown to feed the Akkermansia. So if you say a particular fiber, if I was going to pick one thing to eat, it would be an apple a day with the skin. 2 apples is even better because you're getting 4 or 5 grams of fiber from an apple. That's 10 grams of fiber. A man needs like 32 grams of fiber. So 2 apples, that's just 2 apples and you're already like a third of the way there. But it's not just the amount of fiber, it's the particular fiber that feeds the Akkermansia.
So you said 32 grams. So is that what you recommend to people, is about 32 grams? Or do you recommend more than that?
This is the RDA. Is 32 grams for men, 28 grams for women. And of course, we're all different sizes, so it's not, but roughly, yes. 97% of Americans do not hit the RDA. 97, most people are getting like 15, right? Most people, 97%, that's only 3% left. But yeah, studies have shown if you double that, if you go up to 60, you will get more and more increased health benefits.
Does it matter where it comes from? Like what if, like there's fiber supplements?
It does matter. That's why Dr. B from that book Fiber Fueled explains it's the diversity of the fiber. It's not just the amount. So we know there's soluble and insoluble fiber, right? But every single different food, from a coconut to an apple to a bean to a sunflower seed, every single different food. In fact, Dr. B shows that you take a raw broccoli versus a cooked broccoli, it's going to feed a slightly different bacteria in your gut.
Does the cooking break down the fiber?
No, actually. It's fascinating. You would think so, right? Some fiber, yes, some fiber, no, but for the most part, no, which is so cool. You can but the point is so the trick is the diversity. So yes, there are fiber supplements, and they have a place for them. I use psyllium husk, but basically I like to break it down into, you want to get fiber from eat different greens every day. Like, this is simple. Like, we could talk about the 32,000 species of bacteria and what they like to eat, and I actually have this company that I'm friends with the owner who has this AI app where they measure your stool, and it will literally, using AI, show you which bacteria you have and all these different fibers that we know what fiber feeds this one. I wouldn't say it's perfect science yet, but the point is, greens, fruits, beans, whole grains, root vegetables, and fermented foods. Those will feed, if you eat a little bit of that every day, and like nuts and seeds, all of that will feed different bacteria. I mean, there probably is like some scientific thing that we're gonna discover soon, like with the app, which would be like the perfect balance. But to me, like, eating the beans, like I said, feeds the bifida. But not just that, eating black beans versus lentils versus kidney beans are all gonna feed different bacteria. So they came up with that movie, it was on Netflix, it was all about the gut. And I think they said 15 different plants a day or something. So there's different guidelines. So 32 grams for men, I would say try to get 50. Again, a big bowl of oats with berries. Like, I start my day with 2 cups of blueberries, a big thing of spinach, and like some dates, and maybe some flax seeds. That has like 15 grams of fiber. Blended. That has like 15 grams, because just 2 cups of blueberries is 10 grams of fiber. And it's delicious. Plus, it's got the blue anthocyanins, the polyphenols.
And those are frozen berries?
Frozen, yeah. I get the wild.
It doesn't matter?
No. Doesn't mess up the fiber at all. So that's got like 15 grams of fiber. The first thing I eat. Beans, you got a nice serving of beans. That could be your whole day's worth of fiber. If you eat like a big meal of beans and whole grains, then you eat some fruit throughout the day, it's easy to hit 50.
So you mentioned grains. There's a lot of debate about, especially gluten, mm-hmm. and my partner definitely has celiac disease, because he had a positive blood test for it, and was having really bad digestive issues, so he can't eat gluten. I stopped eating gluten, and when I eat gluten, I have to say now I don't. I do feel like I have a little bit of a reaction. I'm not just sure if that's because I eliminated it. Mm-hmm. But then some people, one person I interviewed for my other film runs this bakery called Tallgrass Bakery, heritage wheat. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, wheat is healthy. Mm-hmm. Grains are healthy. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I definitely love a fresh baked bread, but I have to admit, sometimes I feel a little heavy afterward. And it feels a little addictive too. Like, I just want another slice. Maybe just one more slice with butter. Isn't that delicious? Like, I'm just on the fence. Like, what is it? Gluten bad, good, all the carbs? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I'll give all sides of the argument here. On one hand, wheat is the staff of life. Like, I can't think of one plant more eaten by the entire world. From Africa to Europe to India to China, everybody cultivated wheat and ate wheat for so long. Yes, the wheat is totally different. It's bread. It has like 20 more chromosomes than it used to have. So absolutely, you want to get as close to the heirloom, which has much less gluten. You want to ferment it if you're gonna do it like a bread. So there's all that. Then there's the glyphosate. People don't understand that glyphosate, wheat, corn, and soy are the 3 most sprayed things. So one of the things Dr. Liu showed me is it's more the glyphosate that's really messing people up from the bread. And also the glyphosate in the soy is responsible for lowering the testosterone. But because it's a hormone disruptor also. So that's one side of the argument. The other side is that you, for example, you didn't eat it for a long time. If you're not eating it for a long time, you lose the bacteria that break it down, which it'll come back, but you might want to take an enzyme that breaks it down for a little while. And the same thing with beans. If you've never eaten beans your whole life and you just eat a big bowl of beans, you're going to have a problem. That's why Dr. B recommends, like, start with 3 beans. Just eat those 3 beans. There's going to be a little bacteria that's going to eat those beans, and they're going to be like multiply, and then more and more you eat. So I make delicious breads and dosa, traditional stuff, without gluten. Like, I use millet. Millet's one of my favorite things. Millet and quinoa and amaranth are technically not even grains. They're considered seeds, you know. Technically, to be a grain, it has to come from a grass. So there's all ways to make different flatbreads, but for me personally, I know what you mean. Bread is a lot of readily available carbs, so it's addictive, you know. And when you put the butter on it, that's the danger. So I try to eat. I get an Ezekiel bread, which has a lower glycemic index, so it's a little bit less addictive, and I don't put a lot of oil on it because the combination of oil and bread is the problem. So I'll just, you know, I'll eat like a bread. Maybe I'll have an avocado. That's a treat for me, like bread with avocado. But yeah, I can indulge in it. So not necessary, but also, yeah, it's not necessary, but it's delicious, and if you eat it responsibly. But as far as gluten being the only problem, I think it's a little bit not so simple. But of course, if you have celiac, that's a whole nother story.
That's helpful. And, you know, I've read that celiac could be from glyphosate exposure that permanently harms.
That's why I don't like to like lock something and say, I have this disease, I will never be able to do this again. There's always a new, like, I always keep my mind open and listen for new things. And the body is so much more complicated. So
this is kind of in a similar topic, but, you know, something that my parents became very concerned about, which is lectins. Mm. And so, you know, they soak everything before they eat beans and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What do you feel about that? Do you soak your beans first? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about lectins?
Well, first of all, I soak everything. I love soaking. It's just, you become part of this amazing process. A bean that is hard as a rock, you put it in water for a few hours, it becomes soft. Because nature has all these enzymatic reactions happening. So there's a lot of benefits of soaking. However, the 3 villains of the plant world, the lectins, the phytates, and the oxalates, right? Everyone's afraid of these 3 things, and people are making a lot of money selling books on this. It turns out, again, my research, that lectins are incredibly powerful, and phytates are incredibly powerful cancer fighters. So, and yes, phytic acid binds to iron, which it turns out we don't want too much iron in our bloodstream. So again, I'm not the expert on this. My friend Jeff Palmer, he's quite an expert on this. He has some very deep research, but it's pretty much in the scientific world, it's a consensus that lectins, phytates are incredibly good for you if you have the microbiome to break them down. And here's the thing about the oxalates. So oxalates, they say if you eat spinach, right, there's these tiny little crystal shards of calcium that when they go into your body, they're cutting you. And if you look at it, what's a kidney stone? A kidney stone is oxalates. Yeah. And it's painful. It's like this glass cutting you. So they're like, you eat spinach, you eat chocolate, you eat sweet potatoes. So again, there's entire books written on all these foods you want to avoid. Meanwhile, my mentor, Dr. Lu, she goes back to China and she sees these 97-year-old women every day doing their handiwork, their eyes are working, their joints are fine, and they're eating spinach every single day. So turns out people who eat the most oxalate foods have the lowest kidney stones. Why is that? Because there's a bacteria called the oxalobacter, meaning the oxalate-eating bacteria. So the theory is like this. Your body makes oxalates. So you're eating no spinach, no chocolate, no sweet potatoes, your body's going to make its own oxalates. And they are going to cause kidney stones and joint problems. But it turns out when you're eating the spinach, putting oxalates into your body, you are feeding the bacteria that eats oxalates. So now if you're eating spinach every day, eating like some kind of, again, there's a whole list of foods that feed oxalates. Kale, there are people like, don't eat spinach, you could eat kale because it has less oxalates, but it still has oxalates. If you're eating oxalates, you're going to breed the bacteria. Then when your body makes the oxalates, they're going to eat that too. So there's all studies done on this. But if you take too many antibiotics, the kidney stones goes up. So again, everything comes back to this microbiome. Even like the gluten and the peanut allergies, like we don't break down our own foods. We have bacteria that break them down. So it's literally like a soil. Like we are changing, like we are composting and we are curating that soil. Like take good care of your inner garden,
I love that. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned. I never heard that about the oxalates, and which had become a concern for me because someone in my family had kidney stones, and I would sometimes eat an entire head of kale, and I would steam it, and I'd be like, oh, maybe I better stop doing that.
Dude, I'm eating so much spinach every day now, and I've never felt better. Like joints.
Do you steam it or eat it raw?
Raw.
Or you eat it raw?
I throw it in my smoothie.
Right.
Yeah, I'll send you the study. Jeff Palmer. I could introduce you to him too. He's a great guy to know.
So you studied psychology, you studied Buddhism. How does the microbiome fit into consciousness and awakening and outside of our experience?
Thank you. This is my favorite question. So, I like to think of love as a verb. People are like, I love this. I'm in love. These are cute words, but to me, love means to give without expecting anything in return. It's just this deep feeling of giving, right? Of wanting happiness for another. So you could always start with yourself, right? So every time you eat, there's an opportunity to make yourself healthier or unhealthy. And when I say yourself, I literally mean trillions of beings dependent on you. So from a Buddhist perspective, every one of those trillion microbes has a consciousness. It's literally a separate organism. And if you want to get even crazier, every cell in your human body, if you take a human skin cell or a liver cell, put it in a petri dish, it's going to go after food. So it almost has its own mind, So we are a collection of beings, right? So if you think about it, every time you eat, it could be an act of love for your future self, and also all these microbes. So you could just think, I'm loving all these beings. And when I say love is a verb, if you want to open up your heart chakra, if you want to have more happiness, more peace, have better relationships, it's not like someone's just going to bless you. You have to do loving acts. So every time you eat can be an opportunity to think, I'm feeding all these microbes, Then there's also, the ethical issue of what you eat. So, everything you eat, like that food that arrived at your plate had to come from somewhere. So how much harm and suffering was caused for it to finally arrive in you? So different foods have nothing is harmless. So it's a matter of so having that act of love every time you eat opens up your heart chakra, opens up your spirituality. And then thinking about the environment. Every food has an environmental impact. So I have to say that the more I think of food like that and think about, as an act of love, and not like, there's a difference between loving your body and loving your future self, so you want to give it nourishment, and being like obsessed and like crazy about causing yourself more stress. So just loving yourself and just loving, knowing that you've gone out of your way to do the least harm, that has opened up my spiritual practice. It's, meditation comes easier. I just have more joy throughout the day. Not to mention the fact that I've grown my brain. I've literally grown, you could say like my navel chakra, so it's like, yeah, that had a bigger effect than I thought. Like in the beginning, yeah, I'll admit I was looking for the health benefits. But then once I got into this, like more whole food, plant-based food, I noticed all these unexpected benefits, including my spiritual practice. Yeah.
Excellent. What do you think the link is between what some traditions have called higher consciousness and our microbiome?
Okay, let me think for a second. Okay. So, if you're allowing me to go this deep, there is a concept. Some call it gnosis. In Buddhism, we call it like non-dual, non-conceptual, timeless awareness, wisdom or something, blissful awareness. So there's this concept that we are part of this consciousness. Everything's connected through this base level consciousness. Underneath all my unconscious and all your unconscious, we reach this level where we're all connected to. That's eternal. That's the source of all happiness and bliss, and it knows everything going on at the same time, just like your body. Somehow, through a miraculous process, these trillions of cells are all somehow creating a system, and they know about each other. It's not very understood. But just like that gnosis, that wisdom, that collective consciousness pervades everything. So if that's part of me, how come I don't know what to do? How come I feel so confused and helpless and life's not working for me? Because we don't hear it, like again, through our head. Where do we hear it? We hear it from our gut and our heart. It communicates to us through these levels of consciousness. So again, the brain, this is kind of like another terrain theory. Instead of like your memories being in your brain is the antenna. You've heard this, right? So like the consciousness is my aura, or it's it's the same concept. So you could say that like the deeper levels of consciousness communicate to you through the gut so fast. So the hardware to pick up this level of consciousness is in the brain. The hardware to pick up the deeper, more like true consciousness is in your gut. So I would say that like fixing the hardware by having diverse microbiome, creating these metabolites, and the meditation to listen to it, and then I guess just going into life, and you have to trust it. You have to put it to the test. You have to practice it. Because there's always going to be the voice up here that's going to tell you to do the thing that is going to be a people pleaser. Is going to tell you the thing that's going to not make any conflict. But here, every time you do that and you don't listen to this, and it's good to have both, But there's times when you need to listen to this.
I love that answer. That was not easy. I mean, I have some other questions, but before I go on to them, maybe I think I'd more like to just sort of ask you, is there something in the realm of spirituality or anything that I haven't asked you that you think is really important for people to know?
Outside of the gut or connected to the gut? Okay.
I mean, it could be tangentially connected. It should be somewhat connected.
I got something else. Okay. So, the physical body is like a map or a mirror of our spiritual body. And so where everything is placed is very symbolic. So the gut is roughly below our navel. What else is over there? Our diaphragm. So, when we breathe into our gut as well, it also has, deeper benefits. So I would say that, so breathing into your gut, and not only that, but breathing, calming yourself down also affects the health of your microbiome. Because again, the stress disrupts your digestion. So breathing, the digestive system, the breath system, the thinking, the mind system are so directly connected. So if you eat good food, you're going to have a more peaceful mind. If you have a more peaceful mind, you'll be able to make better choices. Because again, if you're stressed all the time, that donut, that fast food is going to give you the dopamine and the endorphin to counteract the stress of your life. So then it becomes this vicious habit, like any drug. So when you start to de-stress and also eat the healthier food, so now you're shifting over the microbiome, so you're going to be craving better food, it goes hand in hand. So you could almost say, Dr. Lou would say, the three root things is stress, toxins, and the wrong food, and they're all connected to each other. If you're eating the wrong food, you're going to have more stress. If you're more stressed, you're going to eat the wrong food and not breathe correctly.
It's really making me think, everything you've been saying, that looking at all this, how is the standard American diet affecting our evolution as a species? I mean, most people have said, oh, it's just a health. It's, it's more heart attacks, it's more cancer, but there's a whole other level that even beyond that from what you're describing.
Well, this is one of my, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, but it's very sad and alarming. Originally we had fresh fruit growing. We grew most of the fruit in our garden, and then through technology, we discovered ways to make sugar and make oils, and just the supply chains. We're able to eat ridiculous amounts of butter and meat, and these foods that are high in fat, high in carbs, free carbs, like the extraction, how to make white sugar, white flour, and high in salt. Salt used to be very expensive. Now we have an abundance of salt, and we have chemicals like MSG and all these other. What do those four things do? They spike your dopamine. So the second your tongue has been wired to look for these high in calories. So when you eat, if you found a berry tree and you got hundreds of berries and you're picking them and you're eating them, you're getting dopamine in a healthy amount because you're being rewarded, because you're giving your body good things. But through this American diet, we've learned to hijack our own reward system. So now, if you can, a poor person for breakfast can take a ton of white sugar, eat a donut, for very inexpensive. Sadly, the most inexpensive food, because of all the subsidies, is the worst for you, is the most dopamine addictive foods. So in theory, the cheapest foods should be high fiber foods. Beans, these are all supposed to be cheap, but because of the subsidies, McDonald's gets billions of dollars a year because it's we need McDonald's to feed the poor neighborhoods. But what we're doing is we're creating, and corn, I don't know if you know how much corn is subsidized. They get money from our tax money because we need to live. Why don't we put that towards broccoli and growing, healthy apples and stuff, and giving everyone an apple, fix their gut. So where I'm going with this is,
we were talking about beyond just health. How's it affecting?
Oh yeah. So the dopamine. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, we have scrolling, right? That's dopamine. Porn. That's dopamine. So food has become dopamine. Because again, now you can go to a restaurant and they're trying to do something healthy, right? So they're using a little bit less salt, a little bit less oil. But then this place next door opens up and they're going to use more oil. Where's everyone going to go to? Because that gives them more of a high. So how does this mess you up? If you're getting high, if you're literally, your food is your cocaine, what happens? The dopamine that goes into motivation, sex drive, goes down. So if every time you eat, you get this big reward, now you're not going to have the motivation to better yourself, create the business you've always wanted to create, go out and be social. All these things are going to be diminished because you're just waiting for that next hit.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. I've loved talking to you today. Your passion is so inspirational. And it's just been so joyful, and I feel like my microbiome has been happy in this conversation. You've given me a different type of food, and thank you, brother.
Thank you so much too, and I'm in a flow state. This has been a total flow state, which is so good for my microbiome. And on another note, when you meet people in person, you give someone a hug, you're exchanging trillions of bacteria. So yeah, be social. There's a whole nother benefit of being social.
Thanks for tuning in to Gut Instinct today, and a huge thank you to Jason. It was such a great conversation. If this episode sparked something in you, please share it, subscribe, and leave us a review. To learn more, visit gutinstinctguide.com. And until next time, trust your gut.